Hello there and welcome to a non-Liverpool based video, but I had to talk about Rafa Benitez choosing to leave Newcastle United. I am not affiliated in any way with Newcastle. I'm not a fan of Newcastle. Don't have any friends that I know are big Newcastle fans or anything like that. Maybe a couple are, but I am a fan of Rafa Benitez. Obviously, as a Liverpool fan, anyone as a Liverpool fan, you appreciate what he did for us and what he did when we had bad owners ourselves. We've had terrible owners that almost ended our club, almost obliterated what Liverpool Football Club was and basically that is exactly what almost happened. Could have gone south so very, very quickly, and it looked like we were on a decline for a long time. But I appreciate what Rafa gave to us. Brought us the Champions League in his first season. Unbelievable. And probably one of the most historic performances in a Champions League final of all time. Now, let's focus on his Newcastle time. Now, I'm going to quote some stats, and it's going to back up a little bit why I'm frustrated that Rafa feels he's had to leave Newcastle, because he's not getting assurances about things like transfers, he's not getting assurances about money to spend, players to bring in, all that sort of business. I'm going to try and cover it all as quickly as possible, but I want to get a good point out there as well. Now, Rafa Benitez, just off the top of my head, I was reading some stats I think that Sky Sports had put out, and he had a 43.2% win percentage with Newcastle. Now, to some, that doesn't sound great, okay? But if you're looking in the top six world, yeah, that's not the best it could be. But when you consider what he's had to work with in terms of bringing players in, the personnel he's been left to work with, the amount of players that were still there from, say, when Pardew was still there, when John Carver had taken over, when the players that Steve McLaren had brought in as well, the players that he was left with and the players he actually went and recruited himself, he scrimped and scraped and did the best that he could, and he successfully kept Newcastle in the Premier League 2 seasons in a row. I believe that's right. Now, people may point to the fact that, they went down under Benitez. No, they didn't. They went down under Steve McLaren. Benitez was brought in with 10 games to go, and he did the very best that he could, and it just wasn't enough. But it's the similar sort of situation when people turn around and say, well, Alan Shearer took Newcastle down. No, he didn't. They were dead and buried pretty much already. They tried to bring in a legend of the club, the absolute legend of Newcastle. They tried to bring him in to give everybody, the fans, the players, a massive lift and save them from relegation, and it didn't work. Not Shearer's fault, and it wasn't Rafa Benitez's fault. But you know what? Rafa had the option to turn around and say, I've tried to save you from relegation. I'm going to go and try and get into another club, which Rafa Benitez could walk into any top 6 club, in my opinion, in the world, and do a decent job, do a good job, challenge for trophies. He could do that with decent players. If he's allowed to recruit, he can do a very, very good job. He is a tactically astute manager. He is a very good manager. Yes, he can sometimes be stubborn. And you always know how he's going to be. He wants to be compact, wants to be everything nice and concise and together. But he's a very, very good manager. Very, very good manager. And with that win percentage, that 43.2% win percentage, he decided he was going to stay at Newcastle. He liked Newcastle, got them through the Championship. They didn't walk the Championship. Championship was difficult. It's difficult for most teams, difficult for pretty much every team apart from Wolves. So he gets them back in the Premier League, outstanding, and he wins the Championship as well. Alright, it might have been a little bit of a fluke at the end, but he wins the Championship. Comes into the Premier League, is given bare bones to work with, given very, very little money. I remember, I think it was Steve McLaren was given 80 million or something. I think it was Steve McLaren was given 80 million to work with. And to quote the true Geordie, who spends 80 million and gets worse? You know, and that is the levels of manager that you're working with there. You got Steve McLaren, who I don't rate as a manager. I rate him like a Mark Hughes. That's as highly as I would rate him. And Rafa Benitez is a very, very top manager. So I'm going to go back to that win percentage, 43.2%. In Newcastle's history, in fact, let's even just go to the last 10 years. There's only one person who had a better win percentage of 55% than him, and that was Chris Hughton, another manager at Newcastle who got treated very, very poorly and was not allowed to go on and continue his work. He got them, he got them out of the Championship into the Premier League, and they just went, see ya, Alan Pardew. What a mistake that turned out to be, didn't it? Now, you've got a top-class manager. Let's not even talk about the fact that Alan Pardew did, at one point, get Newcastle 5th in the Premier League. Magnificent. I think it was the season that they actually came up, and people probably thought by that point, well, getting rid of Chris Hughton was obviously the right idea, wasn't it? But then, Alan Pardew set in, didn't he? And he just started to go by the wayside. He just couldn't pick a win out of anywhere. Was lucky many, many times not to have gotten relegated. The same sort of thing happened with John Carver. Never will forget Jonas Gutierrez scoring on the last day of the season to save Newcastle from what would have been, I think he scored the second goal in the game. I can't remember if it was against Burnley or not. And he scored the second goal. A cancer survivor, absolute survivor. And he comes in, he slams in something. I think it was from the left side of the box, and absolutely slammed it in, and they win the game and they stay in the Premier League. It was absolute heroics. There was limbs everywhere. John Carver then tells Gutierrez, you're not needed anymore. Unbelievable stuff. John Carver lasted long, didn't he? Another mistake right there. You know, I think he actually had the record of 8 losses in a row for Newcastle or something like that. Ridiculous. Newcastle have had a great manager in Rafa Benitez. I don't care if it comes across as biased because I'm a Liverpool fan, and Liverpool fans obviously really appreciate Rafa Benitez. You know who else really appreciates Rafa Benitez? Newcastle fans. Newcastle fans knew exactly what they had with Rafa Benitez. They knew they had a top-class manager. People saying that if he was given the right tools, he could be like one of the best managers that they could have had since Bobby Robson, and he was an absolute legend, was Bobby Robson. Unbelievable legend for Newcastle. That's what they could have had. If only they would have financed Rafa Benitez in the way even clubs around them, like a Watford, a Bond, the way those guys, they get way more finance. Hell, even if you gave Rafa Benitez Arsenal's funds right now, he would be able to do quite a lot with that. You know, Arsenal fans complain about having 45 million to spend. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But you give Rafa Benitez 45 million, you say that's all you've got, he'd be like, right, but I can work with that. That's fine, no worries. You're giving me something I can work with. You're not giving me much, you're giving me a bit more than I've had recently, but I can work with that. You're giving me something to work with. If you'd have only given him a couple of assurances here or there, have your say on transfers, have the last word on transfers, how about that? Newcastle will not buck the trend. Newcastle think that sitting just above relegation zones every year is good. It's fine. It's fantastic. It's great. We're in the Premier League. We're a Premier League team. And that is fact. Right now you're a Premier League team. But who are you going to recruit now that's going to come in and take over Rafa Benitez and do it as good a job with so little resources? With players probably looking now, Rafa's gone? Why is Rafa gone? I mean, he hasn't been sacked. He is voluntarily just letting his contract run out. Maybe I should start... And don't get me wrong, Newcastle do have some rough diamonds. They do have some very good players. Centre-back Fabian Schär, I think, is a good player. And he could be a very good defender for anybody. I actually believe that. Anyone, you know, within the top 10, maybe top 10... down to maybe top 6, something like that. Between 10 and 6, that's what I'm trying to say. He'd be a good acquisition in my opinion. They've got some good players. That Almiron, yeah, he came in late, but my God, I don't think he assisted or scored a goal or a great deal, but he is a literal electric firehouse. Ayoze Perez will probably end up leaving because he's been flirting with leaving anyway. And then you've got to think, will Newcastle, will they make enough money off these sales to then reinvest? And what are they going to invest in the team anyway? Doesn't look good for Newcastle. Doesn't look good for Newcastle at all. I've got nothing against Newcastle fans. I really don't. They're one of the few clubs that I can look at and think, I don't actually have anything against you. You're an opponent, and whenever my team, Liverpool, comes up against you, I want us to win. Obviously, because I want my team to win. But also, I feel for Rafa, because while different circumstances, he's come up against another owner that doesn't want to invest, that is going against what Rafa Benitez would want. And if anything that we can say that we learnt as Liverpool fans from having Benitez, if Rafa doesn't get what he wants, there's only so long he will stay until he says, I've had enough, I'm out of here. And he had the perfect get out by only having his contract up to the 30th of June this year, which is only, 6 days. So he must have looked at that and thought, right, you guys have got one chance to get me to sign another deal. Give me the best sell that you've got. And Newcastle just went, no. It's a sad day, to be honest. Like, it actually is. It really is a sad day. Because I like Rafa Benitez. I like having him in the Premier League. I just like the guy. I think he's a great manager. I think he could have done a lot with Newcastle. But this is the way that it's going to be. So I'm gutted, really. Honestly. I mean, I'm glad it's not something that's negatively affecting my club, Liverpool. But I feel for the fans, because it's one of those places where, regardless of what happens with their owner, Mike Ashley, who is a disgusting person, to be honest, he really is actually a disgusting person with what he does, and the money that he splashes around, I think taking over Game and stuff like that recently, only a couple of days ago, for like 59 million. I mean, he's splashing cash, just not in the right areas. I don't get it. He is a disgusting person, and it's one of the few clubs where the fans, regardless of what happens, this is what I was just going to say, they still turn up whether that's a negative or a positive, that's entirely up to you guys. That's how you want to look at it. They will still turn up in their droves, whether they're Premier League top 6, whether they're mid-table, whether they're battling relegation, Championship. If they went down to League One, I imagine that Newcastle would still sell out all 52,000. I really do. It's one of the few clubs that I know that would do that, and it's sad to see that Mike Ashley can't see, as a businessman, if he just invested in Newcastle a little bit, he would actually bring in a little bit more for himself because of their success. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I just wanted to have a little bit of a talk about that, because I like Rafa and I hope he lands on his feet, because he will have offers around the world. I guarantee it. Whether it's China, as is rumoured, or if it's somewhere else that is looking for a manager, I'm telling you now, he will have offers. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like this video if you have enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new around here if you feel like it. Thanks ever so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you later.